Hello and welcome back to Writing 123, Thinking, Writing, and Research. In this little video, we're going to be talking about your annotated bibliography assignment, and also just the idea of an annotated bibliography in general. Before we get there, let's talk about sources some more, and the very concept of using sources, that is, other people's thoughts, as you write your own thoughts and as you create your own work of research. So last time we ended basically here, where you've selected some sources and you know how to read the entire text of them down here by view it. You know how to get the citation information here, actions, citation, and we're going to start right there. So here it is. Now remember, you can just copy this, Control C or Command C, and I'm not actually going to paste it because I'm doing something else right now. I'm going to go over to our annotated bibliography handout where I give you an example. For this assignment, you'll be creating 10 of these. Now, you don't have to make each one quite as long as I did here. This is a pretty full annotation for one source, and I did it on C.S. Lewis's Learning in Wartime because we all read that at the beginning of the semester. So what an annotation is simply, as the word suggests, your notes on the source. This is a unique part of the writing process in that it's not for anybody else but you. You're turning it in because this is, it's part of the writing process, and for your grade, we're looking at how well you've gone about completing the writing process. But in general, if you're writing a paper for publication or for your work and you were doing something like this is an organizational tool for you. So I purposefully wrote this one, not poorly, but in a kind of casual way that I might write something to myself. So in this hypothetical example, I'm writing a book on maintaining one's nutritional health while in college. Let's pick something like that. Of course, that applies more to the traditional undergraduate who are living by themselves for the first time. But at any rate, so then I have this source, C.S. Lewis's Learning in Wartime. So I give a brief summary first that covers the whole argument, especially whatever parts I think are going to be most relevant, but it gives a good sense of this is what that article is about, or that essay is about. So Lewis is writing to students at Cambridge in 1939. Here's the situation, etc., etc. And I go into what he's getting at. Lewis says that humans are not made to be purely utilitarian creatures. We tell jokes on castle walls, discuss theories while marching to war, and that sort of thing, etc., etc. Well, what does that have to do with nutrition? Well, the second part of your annotation here is how relevant is this for me? And you could literally say, interesting source, don't think I'll use it, not very relevant for what I'm doing. So for example, here I say, his point is more nuanced than that, but for our purposes, he doesn't touch on nutrition specifically, but there are potential applications to my essay. For example, his emphasis on the holistic nature of being human provides strong support for my ideas about not neglecting one's nutritional health while pursuing university studies. Great. So you notice the complete annotation here is the bibliographic information. This is in MLA style. Remember over here, we said you can pick MLA, APA, or Chicago. Your choice. You should pick the one. I would suggest you pick the one that you'll be using in your profession or in your major or whatever you're doing, because you might as well start learning it now. But I did MLA for the C.S. Lewis one. Here's your citation. That goes at the top of each of your annotations. And you should put them in alphabetical order by last name. And then you write a little summary. And then your next citation and your next annotation, just go right down here. You don't need a new document for each one. It's just a list of your sources with a basic summary of each one and how you think they'll be useful or not. Now, the question might arise, why do this? Well, one thing, we don't get a lot of face-to-face time, and so I don't get to kind of give you my take so much on what's valuable in teaching and those sorts of things. However, I personally am allergic to busy work. or arbitrarily assigned busy work or anything that doesn't seem to fit intrinsically into the overall picture that we're trying to accomplish in a project or a course or something. So don't think that this is just busy work. It's the farthest thing from it. What you're doing here is you're creating your palette, let's say. You're putting your daubs of paint on your palette so that when you go to write your paper, you have it all there in front of you. Okay, here's 10 sources, and you have a basic summary of each one for yourself and what you think you might do with it and things like that. Because as you go to write your paper, remember, you're taking all these things you read and then you are saying something yourself. You're not just regurgitating everybody else. However, you are referencing everybody else because you need to show that you're aware of what's going on in the discipline. So for example, we'll just go back to our aluminum beer can example from before. With that, you need to show that you've read the current research on that you've read the chemist who did experiments on aluminum leaching into, into various liquids, substrates, etc., etc. So you reference him. So you would say, as you know, C.S. Lewis, go back to our example in nutrition. C.S. Lewis, though he doesn't talk specifically about nutrition, he does make an argument for why Christians ought to remember that we live as body, soul, and mind, not simply as a disembodied spirit. And therefore, our physical lives aren't less important, although they might need to be ordered underneath the spiritual life. They're not less important than it. And, in this, with this understanding, my point about nutrition in college, blah, 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 blah. You see, what you're doing is you are dancing with your sources. You're bringing them up. You're the lead, of course, in that dance because it's your paper. But you're introducing your different dancing partners throughout. Some are antagonistic. You disagree with X or Y. Some are your best buddies and dancing partners. And you say, I agree with Jones that, etc., etc. So again, this annotated bibliography is there for you to get your sources organized ahead of time and already have a good idea of where you're going with your argument in relation to these other people's arguments. Okay, I'll wrap this one up, and again, I'm getting close to the 10-minute mark on our recording here, which, 7:42, I'll leave that up so that I know how long we have. This screen capturing app only gives me 10 minutes. So one final thing with sources. I want to emphasize the conceptual framework you ought to have as you go about using sources. So think of them, I said palette, dancing partner. One other way to think of it is as your toolbox. At the end of your essay, you'll have your bibliography or your works cited, and there you'll have all of your sources, no annotations. We're not talking about the annotated bibliography now. We're on to the final research paper. When you have your bibliography, all your sources will be listed in alphabetical order. There they are. That's like your toolbox, because when you go in to when you're writing your essay, each time you mention one of these people, you're going to have a little in-text citation, and we'll talk more about that as we move forward. But you'll have your parentheses and the author's name and page number, or whatever your citation style tells you to do. And those are like, you reached into your toolbox, and I just used this tool, and you might use it again. Lewis, page 24, boom. And then later on you quote something else, Lewis, page 32, boom. And each one of those is like you pulled out your hammer and you just put in one nail there. And then you pulled out, a different source, a different tool, and you screwed in a screw there. Your toolbox is the complete list of your sources, and each time you use them is like, you're pulling that one tool out and using it for this one purpose at each point in your paper. Okay, well, that's enough for now. If you have any questions on your annotated bibliography, which I know for some people it's hard to wrap your head around it, just remember it's all your sources with a little bit of a summary about each one and why that one will or won't be relevant or useful to your paper, and you just list them out. That's what you do. Don't worry too much, like I said, about the prose that you write here. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's for you. Hope it's useful. All right. Coming to the end. Here we go. Bye.